they more than deserve to win that tie. Like they were so much better than Madrid over the past two legs. And it's going to sound ridiculous considering they've just come off beating Madrid 5-1 on aggregate. I think they're the fourth likeliest to win this competition out of the semi-finals.
Hello and welcome back to the Counter Sports Football Podcast. I'm your host, Darren Timson, joined today by Kevin and Grice following their golfing exploits. Guys, how you doing?
It's not golf, but I'll talk about football, I guess, if we have to.
I just assumed we were continuing. I assumed this was a US Open preview. Is he going to do it again?
Well, given by both your excitements in talking about golf, I expect the same level of energy in this podcast today and not the level of checked outness that you're both talking about off air.
Well, I can't.
You're supposed to keep
make
that
any
secret.
promises.
Well, that is in the Premier League, and we're going to start with the Champions League, though, which I think is a little bit more exciting anyway. So we'll just run through Tuesday and Wednesday's action. So obviously Barcelona beat Borussia Dortmund 5-3 on aggregate. Villa beat Paris Saint-Germain on the night but lost 5-4. Inter progressed past Bayern Munich 4-3, and Arsenal really kind of just slapped Real Madrid out their own stadium, to be honest, 5-1 on Wednesday night. We'll start with Dortmund and Barcelona. 4-0 in the first leg, guys, and it probably looked like it'd be a routine second leg for Barcelona, but it was anything but, and it was mainly down to Guirassy with a hat-trick in that game. Kevin, I'll come to you with this one first. Barcelona looking like one of the favourites in this competition, but you can probably see where some of their frailties might lie.
Yeah, 100%. They were very impressive in that first leg. I thought, I mean, so much has been spoken about the front three and how well they work together. And the first leg was a sort of prime example. You know, they all scored. They all sort of had an assist, all involved. But in that first leg, Dortmund had chances, particularly when it was only 1-0. And Guirassy missed an absolute sitter, like at the end of the first half. And I was just thinking to myself, I was like, because I quite like Guirassy. I think he's good. He's good, if not a bit. He can be a bit inconsistent, but he is really good. And yeah, Tuesday night he took his chances, and you just wonder, like, if he'd even stuck one of them away in the away leg, it could be entirely different. The frailties, look, they're committed. They're very committed to this high line, which does work, but it is also, as we've seen, very high risk, and you get chances against this Barcelona team, and you just need to be able to take them. That's why, like, I know we'll get onto them, but this semi-final is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, Barca, I think, are possibly. They're up there with PSG in terms of their attacking talent, and I think their midfield is exceptional as well. But yeah, they can be got at, to use a sort of old sort of cliche. But look, to be fair to them, they went 2-0 down. They were really under pressure, and they got a goal to sort of ease that pressure. You know, it was really good play by Fermin Lopez, who sort of stepped into that Dani Olmo void since he's been injured, played quite well. And yeah, they got the goal. Obviously, Guirassy scored again. They were under a bit of pressure, but at the end of the day, they're through. And that kind of all that matters? Yeah, but I'm sure Flick will be looking at it and realizing that next up is a different proposition. Like, the treble is still on. It is the first time they've lost in 2025. And we're in April, so it's not there. There are concerns, but I wouldn't be like, "Oh Jesus, they've been found out." But yeah, it was an interesting game, and I think if you can do your very best to keep that front three as quiet as possible and take advantage of how high they play, you might find a bit of joy against them.
Yeah, agreed. I think we may as well actually just go into that semi-final leg and talk about Inter now. I think that might be a better way of going about doing it. So Inter, Grice, they beat Bayern Munich over the two legs, 2-2 at the San Siro in the second leg. I think the game, from my point of view, went as how I thought it would. Bayern having a few players injured and Company being an inexperienced manager against Inzaghi, and the Inter players being together for quite a long time. They know how to get the business done. They've been to a Champions League final. Everyone's talking about Paris Saint-Germain. Kevin, you can come into this as well. Everyone's talking about Barcelona and everyone's talking about Arsenal's win over Real Madrid. But is there not a case that Inter are perhaps the most balanced team in the competition left, and by therefore the favourites? Should we not be looking at them that way?
They got to a final 2 years ago. Unfortunately, had to play Manchester City. I think if they played any other team, we'd be talking about them as having won a Champions League not long ago. Inzaghi's done a brilliant job there. I mean, I can't pretend I watch loads of Serie A, but from the little I do watch, he seems to have really got Inter back to where they feel like they need to be. And they're a club with a lot of prestige, and getting to the latter stages of Champions Leagues is maybe the minimum expectation for a club like Inter. And they did well to sort of stem the tide of Bayern's attacks. They created a lot of chances, Bayern, in that game. They just couldn't take them, especially towards the end where they were just throwing literally everything at that Inter goal, and it just wouldn't fall for them. But that's football. That's why we love it. And Inter took advantage when they needed to, sat back when they needed to, and I think that's credit to Inzaghi. And like you said, maybe a bit of naivety from Company in the sense that he can see out that game. He had the advantage from the first leg and knew as long as he didn't lose at home, then it was guaranteed to go through, and that really showed in the game. I mean, Inter only had 37% of the ball, and we know Company's teams are a bit of a ball hog, but to score 2 goals against a good Bayern side with less than 40% of the ball proves that Inter are serious about competing in this tournament, and I think they could go all the way, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I do too. And Kevin, Inter versus Barcelona, on paper, the two of Europeans elites going at it in the Champions League, what we all want to see. Inter Milan, with Lautaro Martinez and Thuram up front, you've got Barella in midfield and Bastoni at the back. Do you think their physicality will get them having the edge over Barcelona? Or what weaknesses do you think Inter might have that Barcelona can exploit?
To answer your first question, the physicality thing is massive. Like, I think they're up there with Arsenal with that sort of having that physical advantage over most teams. The two boys up front,
especially in the forward line as well.
Well, this is the thing. The two boys up front last night particularly were brilliant. And their chemistry is so good as well. We saw it in the first leg with the Lautaro goal, with the little layoff from Thuram without even looking. So they're so good, and like we've mentioned the wing backs. I mean, Dumfries isn't back yet, but Darmian has done a good job out there. And whether it's Augusto or DeMarco on the other side, they're both brilliant and are up and down that wing all game, excuse me. And that's where I think they might be able to take advantage of this high line, because your wing backs are going to be coming from deeper. So it actually, if Barca do step up to try catch the two lads up front offside, it may not even matter, because you'll have the two wing backs coming from inside their own half and bombing forward and being able to get in behind. In terms of their weaknesses, I've praised Simone Inzaghi a lot, and I do think he is one of the best coaches in Europe. I didn't necessarily like what he did last night. in terms of they were very, very happy, particularly first half, and then particularly after they sort of went 2-1 up. They got those 2 goals in quick succession. They were very, very happy to soak up pressure and then just hit them on the counter.
Is that not the Italian Champions League second leg at home, though?
It is. But when you looked at this Bayern side missing Upamecano, Fonzie Davis, Musiala, I think
a kid in goal as well.
Yeah, Irving, exactly. I think you could have put them to bed. Like, you could have put them to bed within the first half of this game, and they didn't. And look, it worked out for them. They won the tie. So, but they just gave up again, kind of like Barca. They gave up a few too many chances. And I know you're looking at it, and you're like, right, they've Bastoni at the back. Pavard is very experienced. I know Acerbi is like 78 years of age, but he actually did all right in the heart of that defense. Jan Sommer is a brilliant goalkeeper. Like in terms of shot stopping, particularly, like he is really, really good. So they do have that old Italian sort of, right, you might think you have a chance, but here's a last ditch block, here's a last ditch tackle, you're not getting through. And I know they conceded more goals in this tie against Bayern than they had done throughout the whole Champions League. But because Barca have that front three, and you'd imagine it'll be a similar enough game plan, they'll let Frankie de Jong and Pedri and all these boys have the ball in the middle of the park, and then they will sort of hold out, try as best they can to hold out, and then you've 2-on-2 up top. And I like Pau Cubarsí, but he can be a bit overeager, and when you're playing against a fella like Thuram, who he uses his body so well, and he never seems to lose a physical duel. It's amazing. The ball's either plays up to him, he wins it, lays it off, or else the ball's played up to him and he wins a free kick. He's so good. And then Martinez is such a intelligent footballer as well. He always picks up the right positions and always seems to be in the right areas to take advantage. Look, I've said since October, I think Inter will win it. So I'm not backing down now. And I know everyone wants like a PSG Barca final. Oh my God, look at all this attacking talent. It's kind of like in 2019, when it was like Ajax and Barca who were like, oh my God, it's like Johan Cruyff has just like cast his spell, and it ended up being Liverpool and Spurs. So I think it might be Inter Arsenal, the two better defensive teams. But yeah, like I said, I've stuck with my guns since our ludicrously early predictions. And
well, they're not looking so ludicrous now.
Hey. Look, hey. That's not for me to say. You know me. I don't like to highlight when I've been right a lot of the time. I'm very humble. So
yeah. Well, I won't be giving you any more praise for announcing PSG as finalists earlier on.
That was in a private group chat, Darren, and you will not, and you will not bring that to the airwaves.
Grice, do you want to touch in on that as well? Are you looking at Inter Barcelona and seeing Inter as the favourites? Because I think I am as well. And with the attacking talent that Barcelona have, I do look at some of the maybe inexperienced youngsters that Barcelona do play, like Cubarsí, who's an incredible talent, but is so young, and coming up against someone like Marcus Thuram is going to be maybe the hardest test of his career so far. Where are you standing with this Inter Barcelona tie?
Yeah, that's exactly the point I was going to latch on to, is sort of maybe the inexperience of some of these Barca players. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're good enough, you're good enough. It doesn't matter what age you are, and Flick obviously trusts them a lot to be playing these players in a Champions League quarter-final, and will probably play them again in a Champions League semi-final. And they've got players coming back from injury. Dani Olmo came off the bench again, so he probably will replace Fermin Lopez, you'd think, for the semi-final. So they do have players coming back. Rafinha is obviously. I'm not going to say he's on a Ballon d'Or charge because I think that's already been wrapped up. But he's had a very good season. Lewandowski's scoring goals. So they have these experienced players to go along with the young raw talents they've got in their side. But I just can't really see a world where Inter don't, like Kevin said, sit back, absorb all of the pressure, do what they do best, and then just bomb it up the pitch and take advantage of the space that Barcelona will leave with their high line. That just seems to be the most obvious way for Inter to get something out of these two games. And we're all football managers, so we can all see what's going to happen. And yeah, an Inter a PSG final would be amazing. But as Kevin said as well, it will probably be Arsenal Inter, and we'll get to see two really low blocks sort of nullify each other for 90 minutes and be a 0-0 in the Champions League final.
So I just want to touch on there. Do you think Rafinha's got the Ballon d'Or wrapped up?
No, I said Salah's got the Ballon. I meant Salah's got the Ballon
okay.
d'Or wrapped up.
Okay, well,
Disagree, but that's another episode.
Hey, well, I'm not having a player that's only scored 13 goals in the La Liga winning the Ballon d'Or. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. Anyway, moving on.
Wait till he wins the treble.
Well, if they get knocked out, then surely you can't give it to the Champions League winner because none of them have been.
Step forward, Lautaro Martinez.
Okay, so the other tie then. Paris Saint-Germain versus Real Madrid, and Grice will stay with you here. So Paris obviously beat Villa 3-1 in Paris, then went to Birmingham and lost 3-2 in the second leg. Real Madrid lost 3-0 in the first leg, which was heavier than Real Madrid are used to in their opening first leg away games, where they tend to not show up and pin all their hopes on the Bernabeu, but hopes were not at the Bernabeu as they lost 2-1 to Real Madrid, to Arsenal. Saka and Martinelli with the goals there. Interesting tie between Paris and Arsenal because, like Kevin almost alluded to it there, it's pretty much attack versus defense in this game. But I think Arsenal have some pretty major issues going into this one. Thomas Partey obviously was yellow carded late on against Real Madrid last night, so he will be missing that first leg in Paris, which will potentially mean a midfield of Rice and Odegaard and who the fuck else, with Mikel Moreno up front and Lewis Skelly at the back, so I don't really know what's going to happen there. How do you look at this tie? Because I look at it as I think Paris have the capabilities to rip Arsenal apart to complete shreds in that first leg, given the issues that Arsenal might have. Do you think differently?
I mean, as much as I like to discredit Arsenal and have a pop at them every now and again, I do have to give them some credit as they have just beat Real Madrid 5-1 on aggregate in the Champions League. Begrudgingly, I'll admit they did a good job. I do think they took advantage of Jude Bellingham not playing. I didn't really see him for 90 minutes last night.
Was it only Jude Bellingham? I thought it was Mbappe and Vinicius that
I don't think any of them turned up, and I'm not going to say Arsenal got lucky because they did well to sort of marshal them out of the game, but when Real Madrid's best players aren't turning up, you've got to take advantage of it, and that's exactly what Arsenal did. I think they set the tone early, even if they did miss the penalty, which I prefer not to speak. Why are you trying to Panenka Thibaut Courtois? But they built themselves back up and obviously got that goal, which was the important one, I think, because it sort of removed a lot of the pressure. If you can get that away goal, go 4-0 up, there's a long way back for Real Madrid, even if they are going to use some of the dark arts. And it gave them that cushion to sort of feel a bit more safe, and yeah, they did the job they needed to do in the first leg and never really looked back, so credit to them. But like you said, and Kevin said, this is very much going to be attack versus defense now, and PSG, although did lose on the night, like you said, at Villa, maybe should have lost. Villa did have a lot of chances that they couldn't take. John McGinn, especially in those first couple of, first like 20 minutes or so, maybe should have buried one or two. And Arsenal might take some confidence from that because they've obviously played Villa twice or maybe more this season. I can't remember in cup competition, so they'll know how Villa play. They can look at their strengths and see what Villa did and see how they can get at PSG. Whether they will just do what they normally do and sit in a low block and hope their front three can make something of nothing, and that might be what happens. But you'd expect PSG to be the one attacking for 90 minutes and then Arsenal go up the other end and get a last minute goal or something like that from a set piece. So that's probably what will happen.
So Kevin, what Grice says there, and with the hope that watching that Aston Villa game, I agreed with that until Thomas Partey got himself a yellow card, because they again go from, because I'll give Partey his credit this season. He's probably been one of the best defensive midfielders in the Premier League and potentially even in Europe as well. But then you go from two physical monsters to just one in Declan Rice. And is it going to be a case where they bring Calafiori into left back and then move Miles Lewis-Skelly into the midfield? And I don't know if I see Arsenal being able to overpower at that point Fabian Ruiz, Vitinha, and João Neves. Then when you look up front, I mean, just the attacking options they've got without Gabriel in defence who helps Saliba there with Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Barcola, Due and Ramos off the bench. It's I had more hope for Arsenal, and then Partey got himself yellow carded. What do you think of that?
Yeah, first of all, like, what are you doing? Like, there's no need. Rudiger is, let's just say, he has form for. By the way, he should have been sent off last night. He stamps on Lewis-Skelly. Anyway, without going into refereeing incidences from last night, I think you're right. Look, if you watched the game last night, and particularly if you watched the game on TNT Sports, you would have thought there was a mixture of Patrick Vieira, Roy Keane,
oh my goodness,
Luka Modric, and Toni Kroos playing middle pack. Now, I will say, and I was going to be the one to say, because I'm on this podcast, I am his biggest fan, but Rice was excellent over the last two legs. He was absolutely brilliant. He was the best player on the pitch in the two legs, without a doubt. So you have to give him credit for that. I mean, for all the obsession over Rice in the broadcast, they failed to mention, as Liam did, that Jude Bellingham was nothing short of it. Look, he wasn't a disgrace, but he was awful. But yes, I think Rice is at his best when he has someone like a Partey to be alongside him. And then that allows him to be able to read the game and power forward like he does. That are his best qualities. We've seen this happen, particularly with England, when he is the deepest of the midfielders. And I don't trust him to get things going from deep like that.
Yep.
And my fear for Arsenal in this first leg, as you mentioned, is that PSG midfield might just get hold of the game early, unlike what Real Madrid did. Real Madrid were awful last night. I think they were even worse last night than they were in the 3-0. There was no fluidity. There was no sense of them working together as a unit. Whereas you look at this PSG team, and yes, they have all these wonderful players, but you can tell this is a Luis Enrique team.
Yeah.
This isn't the Ousmane Dembele, Kvaratskhelia team. This is a Luis Enrique team. And even the front three, who all probably kind of like Real Madrid, kind of probably want to play that same position wide on the left. But they're so well put together, and he has them feeling confident and they know their roles. And I just feel as though Arsenal, who, again, they more than deserve to win that tie. Like they were so much better than Madrid over the past two legs. And it's going to sound ridiculous considering they've just come off beating Madrid 5-1 on aggregate. I think they're the fourth likeliest to win this competition out of the semi-finalists. And it's because of that. I mean, Madrid were playing last night as if they had Niall Quinn up front. Just playing crosses into the box.
I've never seen them cross the ball so much.
Yeah, and Saliba, and I know he made the mistake for the goal, but that's just meat and drink for Saliba. He's just going to head away and clear away. I thought Timber was excellent. I thought, to be fair to him, Kivior was really good as well. But they Madrid played into their hands, and I don't feel like PSG will do that. I think PSG will stretch them. Now, to be fair to Arsenal, they have dangers on the counter-attack. I mean, Saka is just phenomenal when he's on form. He's so good. Yeah. Martinelli seems to have sort of come out of that 18-month slump a bit.
Can I just say on Martinelli, though? I think he is a better player when Arsenal play counter-attacking football.
Yeah,
I don't
100%.
I don't think
like
he
his goal last night was really good. His goal last night was really good. He took it brilliantly. I thought Marino as well. Like, Jesus, is he the best midfield striker you've ever seen in your life? Just leading the line from the front. They did a lot well and they deservedly won. I just think, in a way, it's gonna sound it sounds ridiculous when it's coming out my mouth, but PSG are more of a team than Real Madrid since Kylian Mbappe has left them to join Madrid. And I just feel as though the quality of PSG, because Arsenal have had these injuries in those forward areas, and do you really trust Kivior against a front line as fluid as this? I don't know. So I think, and that, like you said, that yellow card for Partey might just really give the upper hand in that midfield battle. But look, they've given themselves a great chance, and they were deserving winners. And it's hard to see them. I said this before the Madrid game without remembering that Madrid are just they're just players basically, rather than a team. But the firepower of PSG, I just think maybe a bit much for an Arsenal team missing Partey and then Gabriel and So we'll see. He might play Calafiori up front and bring Marino back into the
well, Calafiori can also shoot as well, to be fair to him.
That's true.
But the other thing for PSG as well is their fullbacks are just immense at the minute. They're probably the most informed fullbacks in world football right now, with Nuno Mendes on the left and Hakimi on that right. And that's where it's going to be really interesting for Saka, because Nuno Mendes pretty much locks Salah down.
Yeah, I was going to say he did really well against Salah. And so it'll be interesting to see, because there was always the thing with Mendes. I always thought he was always really good going forward, like even from his days at Sporting. And then you're just like, okay, he might be a bit naive defensively, but he seems to have really upped that part of his game. And you're right, he's been the best left back in the world, I think, this year.
Yeah, I do too.
Justice for Fede DeMarco, I can see Liam thinking there, but different position. So yeah, I think now again Saka is and has been brilliant since coming back from the injury. Less said about the penalty, the better. But to be fair, he took his goal really well. So that's a really interesting battle, because as well Saka will have to follow him back the other way. So yeah. Look, I think they're two really good semi-finals. They're two really, really good, lovely contrast to styles. And in contrast to our next subject, I'm thoroughly looking forward to them.
Well, just before we get there, then should we give a quick little prediction for our semi-finals? Bryce, we'll start with you.
I think. Do you want who I think is going to go through, or do you want the score?
Who's going to go? If you want to give us the score, Bryce, give us the score.
I don't know if I'm going to go that in depth. I think the final will be PSG and Inter.
I see where this is going already. Kevin.
Yeah.
So, I said months ago in our private group chat that Darren did bring up at the top of the show that I thought it would be PSG Inter. I believe it was when the round of 16 draw was made.
It was, yeah.
And I've just called them the fourth most likely team to win it. But I'm going to stick with my everybody wants a PSG Barca final. So the football gods will throw up Inter Arsenal.
Well, let's see. I hope not.
Well, I'm going to say, because I think I know what you're going to go. I think I know what you're going to go for. So I feel like we should have something.
Yeah, well, disclaimer, it's not because I have bias against Arsenal. I don't. If they make the final, then it's fair enough for them, because like they perfectly deserve to go through past Real Madrid. Like they absolutely did. I see a situation where
never seen
something similar, like the Aston Villa first leg in Paris happens, where they go back to the Emirates with like 3-1, 2-1, 2-0 sort of scoreline. And I think Paris have just learnt their lesson from Aston Villa, and it'll be interesting to see how they would deal with that. So yeah, in conclusion, I'm going to go with Paris Saint-Germain versus Inter in the final. But look, if it's Arsenal, then I won't be watching. On to the Premier League. We'll go through this pretty quickly, I think, because from Newcastle down to 10th, so that's 3rd to 10th, you've got a pretty good split between teams that can make the Champions League and then 3 teams that are in line for the Conference League. So Newcastle, Forest, City, Chelsea, and Villa are all separated by 5 points going into the final 6 games of the season. Forest had a little bit of a slip. They've gone down to 4th now. City winning a couple of their last few games. Villa, 5 games out of 6 that they've won, but just being knocked out of the Champions League will be interesting to see how they deal with that. And then you've got Bournemouth, Fulham, and Brighton all in 48 points, and they're probably in a fight now for the Conference League. So, Grice, I'll start with you here then. If you look at maybe the final games for a few of these teams and the level of bottleness that Chelsea seems to be displaying at times, do you think it's likely that it's going to be a Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, City Champions League places, or do you think Villa might be able to sneak up there?
Yeah, I think if I was going to pick the teams to get in that remainder of the Champions League places, that's probably who I'd go for. I'm just looking at the run-ins now, and City do have to play Villa, so that'll be quite a big game. That's a Champions League 6-pointer. If you like, Forest have a relatively easy run-in. They've obviously got that FA Cup semi-final against City, so whilst they won't get points in the league, they can maybe get a psychological win over whichever team wins. And apart from that, it seems weird to say Forest have Tottenham, which you'd probably expect them to win given how bad they've been this season. Brentford, Palace, Leicester, West Ham all seem like relatively easy 3 points as well if Forest can get their act together again. And then the big one is on the final day, they've got Chelsea at home, which if Chelsea, like you said, stop bottling, can keep themselves in contention for a Champions League place, then that's a massive game to have on the final day if it's not sorted out by then. I think Newcastle have pretty much secured theirs now. They've won, is it 5 in a row in the league now? I think. I mean, pretty convincingly demolishing Palace last night, who have been in quite good form recently. So that's a bit of a statement performance. But they do have to play Arsenal. They do have to play Chelsea, Newcastle. So they've got tough games coming up. And with Jason Tyndall at the wheel, who says they can't get Champions League? Villa, I think, I don't know. They're the team for me that have the least chance, because I think the teams above them will probably perform better in their remaining games. The City have Villa, like I said. That's the big game for me. Whichever one of those two wins in that game, I can see getting that 5th spot. If Chelsea continue to be Chelsea under Maresca, so I'm gonna go, like you said, when you introduced the question, I'm going Newcastle in 3rd, Forest in 4th, and then City in 5th.
I do just want to add as a disclaimer that the reason why I've put Bournemouth, Fulham, and Brighton as potential Conference League teams is because if Villa finish 6th, Chelsea finish 7th, which I think is what's going to happen. Then Chelsea would be in a Europa Conference League spot, but I expect them to win that competition, which would then open up a Conference League spot for 8th. Kevin, are you along the same lines as Grice there?
Yeah, pretty much. I have one change. I'm looking at the tab. I have one change. I think City will finish 4th and Forest will finish 5th. I've just the way the two teams seem to be going, Forest.
Sort of like a
Yeah. Like they've lost their last 2. I know they won their the previous 3 before the last 2 losses. But I just feel they might just be coming to a bit of a sort of decline towards the end of the season. Whereas I think City now, City were really good against Palace the other day, and it's been an awful season for them. And now that there's kind of something to play for, but also not really. I just think that they'll step it up and they'll do enough to get 4th. And I just see Forest sliding slightly. As for Chelsea, I mean, I agree with you. The vibes are just really bad around Chelsea at the moment. They really are. I was listening to another podcast. I know I shouldn't be saying this on ours, but I was listening to I won't name it. But they described Enzo Maresca as like the anti-Rory McIlroy in terms of entertainment, because it's just like the most turgid thing you can imagine. And he has a problem with Cole Palmer because he stopped scoring, he stopped contributing. And I think Villa now that they're out of the Champions League, they will try as hard as they can to get into it again. I don't think they'll quite manage it, but I think they might finish above Chelsea in 6th. So I'd go Newcastle, City, Forest, Villa, Chelsea. And then if that 8th spot comes up, let's go Super Marco Silva's Fulham.
Fulham?
Yeah, why not?
Fulham. Wow. So I think I'm similar as you there with the positions of the teams. What might be funny is if Arsenal put everything into the semi-final and then Newcastle takes 2nd off. That might be hilarious. But no, I think, absolute credit to Newcastle, by the way. After winning that EFL Cup final, they've just been on a sensational run of form, and I think they're only a couple of signings away from not maybe challenging for a title, but really cementing themselves as maybe, going up until like April or something like that. Yeah. And I think they just need another centre back and a right winger, really, and a goalkeeper, to be honest.
I think a lot depends with Isak as well in the summer.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to go though.
Yeah, if our sort of predictions come true and they get Champions League, you can say, look, you're playing Champions League football regardless. And here are the 3 signings that will, put us over the edge. Look, it's just It's just such a feel-good story. You can't help but sit up and take notice.
Okay, well, we won't get into that one. Looking at the Conference League spaces, as much as I'd happily see Fulham get into 8th, I wonder if Spurs sack Ange, are they going to appoint Marco Silva, which would then be a bit of a shame for Fulham. So I'm going to go with Bournemouth just based on, I think Andoni Iraola will be there next season. And then they
But what if Spurs sack Ange and appoint Iraola?
Then it all goes out the window. And I saw a report the other day that said Marco Silva was a leading candidate, and I thought that was a bit long overdue. All the talk was about Andoni Iraola and everything else. But when you look at Fulham, Marco Silva's been one of the most consistent managers over the past 3 years with barely a budget, mid-table. He absolutely deserves the chance of managing a top club.
Do you want me to say Brighton will finish in the Conference League place, and then we can say Spurs might hire Fabian Hirschler as manager in the summer?
Spurs' manager hopes on all
whoever gets the Conference League spot,
yeah,
that's Spurs' next manager.
Oh God.
Yeah.
David Moyes for Spurs manager.
Hey.
If we want to be outdated, so we are recording this on a Thursday. The Europa League is tonight, but this is going to go out on a Friday. Just to put ourselves in a stupid situation for no reason. Tottenham Hotspur United, are they going through?
One of them is.
I think United will, and I think Spurs won't.
I'm going the opposite. I think Spurs will and United won't.
I'll go the opposite and I'll say neither will.
Oh, hello.
Who's winning the Europa League?
Athletic Club.
Yeah,
Bilbao.
You're tough to look past Bilbao given the finals at their home stadium. They have all of the Basque region behind, not Basque region. Yeah, it's Basque region.
It is
their
Basque
region behind them, which is a pretty big supporter fan base to have behind you. I mean, you'd expect them to beat Rangers at home pretty comfortably. But Rangers are weirdly really good in Europe and then just terrible domestically. So I never know what Rangers are going to do, to be honest.
Yeah, it'll be a nice send off for Nico Williams as well, who I think might leave in the summer if they were to win the Europa League at home. You know, I mean, if they had sort of taken advantage of Real Madrid and Atletico's slips and Barca's sort of slip at Christmas, you never know, they could have even had a shout at the La Liga title. But I think they're the best team left in the competition, so I think they'll win it.
Yeah, justice for Bodo Glimt. We'll leave it there.
Hey, look. Bodo Athletic final. Here we go.
We'll leave it there. I think we're coming up to around 40 minutes, but as usual, I actually don't really know because our recording times doesn't really make sense to me. If you want to watch the boys talk about Rory McIlroy's win, it is a bit of a week old now, but you should go watch it. I think next week we might return to Formula One, but after that, I'm not really too sure what we're going to do. But anyway, thank you to Kevin and for Grice for joining me today, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.